tips and tutorials to increase your online presence, websites, social media, online donations, applications, databases, and more. This is OrgSpring.
Hey everybody, this is Craig from OrgSpring, and in this video we are discussing the Nimble Social CRM in the context of nonprofits. In this overall series, we discuss the general CRM and its capabilities, and in this particular video we are discussing the settings for Nimble. So this is a getting started video, and you'll see here we're logged into Nimble. And you can come up here on the right side of your screen, up in the top menu bar, you'll see the link for settings. Just click on that link and it takes you over to your organizational settings. And this is for your specific account. So if you have multiple users, obviously you'll have to change this for each one of the users. Or if your users are doing this individually, you can have them do it there as well. So what we have here is you'll see a snazzy little picture which you can add by choosing a file here, navigating on your desktop and picking the file that you want to use. You'll notice that they do give you some suggestions which I find helpful. It's a maximum size of 400 kilobytes, so it's about a half a meg, so it's not a huge picture. And they're saying you could either use JPEG, GIF, or PNG. And for best results, you want to try to use a picture with a square aspect ratio. For example, 75 by 75 or 200 by 200. That way, when it crops it down, you don't lose any of that dimensions. There'll be no hard cropping on the top or the sides if you use a square image ratio, because that's what it uses to display images inside the application. Obviously, you'll see the name information. You'll want to put down the number of employees that your organization has. Probably won't have greater than 2,000 employees. But generally speaking, what you're going to do here is put down the number of employees that your organization has that will be accessing the actual account. It doesn't really matter whether or not this is the people accessing the account or the total number of employees for your organization, but you can put that there. You'll put down some general information, and this is what other people are going to see when they're looking up your profile within the organization. Obviously, you set your time zone and your currency. Currency comes into play when you're tracking deals or grants. You're going to have your email address that you use to log into the system here, your account password, and then it'll give you a little bit of information about your plan here. You'll click Save Changes, and that's taken care of. We're going to skip the billing area just because there's sensitive information on that particular part of this, but suffice it to say that when you click on the billing area, you will notice your credit card information that you have on file. There will be some frequently asked questions about how you might be able to cancel the account if you want to do that. It'll also tell you if you have any current billing statements owed to Nimble, things like that. Just general sensitive credit card information, also information about the plan that you're on and what that might include. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can click in on your own account and see where it takes you. The next step is notifications, and this will control how you're notified by the application via email and also in pop-up windows. So, for example, there are two major ways you can be notified, via email and via pop-up. You also have two separate types of notifications: a general daily summary, which rolls up all of the daily events that you have and sends that to you, again, either in an email or a pop-up window, and then your task notifications. So, for example, if you have a general task or an activity that you're supposed to be completing, or if there's an event, a calendar event, things like that, that can also be sent to you via email or through a pop-up window. This also covers different ways that people are going to interact with your tasks. So if you have invited different people to those events, that information will be sent along with that as well. So for example, email here, so we'll see a daily summary. So I'm just going to click here on an email. This is what a Nimble email looks like for a daily summary. So you'll see here Nimble Daily, June 4th, that's today. And you'll see that we had one birthday and job change. So you can quickly just click on this. It'll take you to your Nimble account, and you can send a note to that person. In this particular case, it was sent through Facebook, so it would be done that way. And then there are different engagement opportunities. And this is something really cool that you can see even if you're not in front of your application, Nimble or in some other application where you're able to send these different things. But it will show you some engagement opportunities that you might want to look into. For example, this particular person started following me on Twitter, and it gives some information through cloud. So it gives their cloud score, what they might be influential in, and then it gives you the ability to reply to them directly through the Nimble application. You'll see here a few other people who started following me, and it's suggesting, you'll see based on their cloud scores going down here, and also the timing of when they followed me. Obviously, if they followed me within the last day, it'll be included in this daily roll-up. Now, this is just the email. If you actually go to the Nimble Daily page, you'll see all of the potential engagement opportunities. For this one, they just list the top 5 or 6. And then you'll also see your calendar or event task information listed here. So for example, we have a couple personal items here. You'll see we needed to follow up on something, and then apparently I have to call the doctor. So down here we have what's listed for today, and you'll see we have a few people that are listed in that meeting. So when I set this meeting up in the Google Calendar, I had attached 2 specific people to that meeting, and it's showing their contacts here. So if I were to click on this, it would take us directly to the application. Sign in real quick. And it takes us directly to that contact along with all of the information we have listed for that contact. So you'll also see we have a few other things that we have here and a few other tasks along with people attached to those tasks. And you'll see that all listed in your daily email. So if you are in a place where you don't have access, say, to a computer, you can interact with Nimble just through your email in this daily roll-up. You can get the same thing via pop-up windows. So for example, when you have an activity that's coming up, you will see a pop-up on your screen, and it won't be cleared until you clear that out, just like a normal reminder would work, say, for Gmail or a calendar or something to that regard. The next section of the settings is networks and imports, and this is going to control all of the different types of networks that we have attached to our account, and it will also let us import contacts and companies into Nimble. So what you'll see here when you start on the screen, you go to networks and imports, and you will see all these different networks, social networks that Nimble integrates with natively. You won't see anything here, but you will see buttons like this, connect or add file for the import case. But up top, you'll see that you can do things like LinkedIn works natively, as does your Gmail or your Google Apps. Your Google Plus account will work. Your Google Calendar account will work. Obviously, you can import Twitter, Facebook, Facebook Pages. If you have Outlook and you have a local Exchange server, you can use IMAP settings from your Exchange server and connect those up, and that will import your contacts from your Outlook. You can also connect your Foursquare account, which will show any integrations or connections you might have on Foursquare. You can use an Outlook flat CSV file or any generic CSV file. You could also import vCards. So if somebody is sending you vCards, you can take those and import those directly into Nimble. So you can add several Gmail accounts and pull contacts or import contacts from all those places. And you'll notice here, once you do, it will keep these in sync, which is great. But as you add other contacts, those interactions will be straight on your Nimble page, and they'll be added either through your social feeds, like we showed you in one of our previous videos where you can import contacts, or directly as you go along in the social network. So you'll simply just come down here and click Connect, and Nimble will open up an authorization box which will try to log into your account and authorize the connection with that account. So obviously you'll have to create the authorization. Well, you really don't have to create it. You just have to approve the authorization, and you'll follow the prompts for these particular windows. So for example, if you wanted to add a Gmail account, it's going to open up a Gmail authorization, and you can grant access, or some will say allow access, and you can do it that way, and it will add those accounts directly there. You can also add different types of pages, like for instance Facebook pages. Obviously you can only have one Facebook account linked at a time and one Facebook page linked at a time, and you can hook up those networks and track them that way. Same thing with Twitter and Google+. Currently, you can only have one Google Calendar listed. So if you use multiple Google Calendars, if you want to track all of them within Nimble, you'll have to select one main calendar to track. That is something that is on their radar for future development. It just hasn't been added yet to track multiple calendars. The next area of settings is account usage. So you'll click on that area and it'll show you a little summary bar of the capabilities of your account and the extent to which you're using that account. So for example, the plan I have allows me to have 30,000 contacts, and right now I'm using approximately 8,300 of them. Additionally, I have about 5 gigabytes of storage that I'm able to use, and right now I'm using a half gig of that, which is 11%. Over here, you'll see I have an unlimited amount of third-party integrations, email accounts, unlimited deals, and these are the numbers of those I'm tracking. Right now, I'm not currently using custom fields, although if you were using custom fields, it would show you which they were here and how many you were using. Now, as you get closer to this, of course, this is for file storage. So if you're storing, you can't store documents. It doesn't allow you to store, say, a PDF document or things like that. When you try to attach documents, you do so via attaching a link through a note. So this is all of the amount of storage used, and this is information that pulls from things like emails and contact information and stuff like that. So as you start to increase here, you'll need to potentially move up to a different plan that includes additional storage or additional contacts. So you want to be cognizant of the information that you have here. Generally speaking, your initial plan, which is just a few dollars a month, gives you access to 30,000 contacts. You'll probably be hard-pressed to hit that number just as your organization is in its infancy. So it shouldn't be a problem having that much space in your account. The next area of settings is the email signature page. And you'll notice here it's just an empty box with some HTML signatures here. And you'll see here we have a separator along with my company name, a link to my website, my email, phone, and then just a quick note with some other information here. I also include my Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus profiles here. So you can edit this, and when you send out an email from within the Nimble system, this will be attached at the bottom of all your contacts, your email contacts. When you're done editing that information, you just click Save Signature, and that will be included in all future emails going out. This is similar to something that might be used, say in Gmail. They have a signature setting, and also in Outlook that has a signature setting. It's the same idea here. Contacts going out directly from Nimble will have this signature attached to it. I use the same signature through my Google Apps application as I do here in Nimble, just to make sure we maintain a little bit of consistency when we send out emails. The next section is users, and this will list all of the users that are currently tied into your Nimble account. This particular account is a test account, so it's just myself here, but if you have other users on your team, you will notice those users listed here, and you can interact with them through this panel as well. Now, if you come back up to notifications, account usage very quickly, you will see we have one registered user, and this will be listed based on your account, the number of users you can have. I believe this particular account has the ability to add up to 5 users. You can have an almost unlimited amount of users depending on the account that you have, and then you pay a monthly fee based on the number of users attached to that account. So you can see all those people here. If you did want to invite a separate user, you could just come here to invite users, and you'll see here. So the particular plan that I'm on right now says I would be charged $15 a month for each user invited. So once that person becomes a user down here, then you will start the additional billing when that person accepts and actually joins the system. So you'll want to be careful how you use this to make sure that you are inviting people who you do want to have access to your system. Now keep in mind, they will have access to all the information in your system that you're not making particularly private. So you want to be careful about who you do invite into your system. Typically speaking, when you're dealing with a system like this, you only want to invite users who are part of your organization. You don't want to invite other users who might have access to sensitive information within your organization. The next section is deals. And this is going to give you some specific settings related to your deals. So for example, this will show the stages of your deals. And what you can do is take a quick look at this note and it explains to you. So deal stages allow members of your sales team to track their sales process. And what you can do here is change these. For example, you can edit this name. So these are pretty typical sales qualification type of messages or status areas for a particular stage of a deal, and you could add or change these. So for example, for a nonprofit, you might not have qualification. You might not have something called ID decision makers. For example, if I were doing a grant, if I were tracking a grant, if that's what most of your deals were set up to do, is to track grants, you might change these to be different settings. For example, qualification is a good setting. You might be tracking something in terms of, hey, is this even a grant that we would apply for? Now that might be a little bit too early. You might not put something like that in your system, so maybe qualification doesn't fit. But for example, let's say you sent out a letter of inquiry as your first step. So you might change this to letter of inquiry. And then after that person receives the letter of inquiry, maybe the grant administrator asks you to submit a full proposal. So you might put the next step as full proposal submitted. And then they're going to have a review. So you might have some time of follow-up, for example, when you're speaking to that grant administrator and they have questions. So you could put that down as needs analysis, or more particularly for the nonprofit sector, maybe you could put submit additional information, or you could maybe list it as follow-up, grant follow-up, things like that. Quote proposal probably doesn't fit, so what we would do here is maybe delete that. It's going to get rid of that. Negotiation maybe really doesn't fit either, so we might delete that. So after the submit additional information, these are your intermediary steps. You'll see here this would be saved. So if we came to our deal section, we'll just open that up here. You'll notice the first is a letter of inquiry, full proposal submitted, submit additional information, and then close deal. You could also click on this particular deal and you'll see the stage here. So you can change your stages here as well. So if we were to move this from letter of inquiry to, let's say that we submitted a full proposal, it's updated, we go back to the pipeline, it automatically moves it there. Now if we were going to close this deal, where if we got this funding, we would take this and just drag it to close deal. And then it'll ask you if you won or lost the deal. So if you got the grant, you would click win. If you lost the grant, you would click lose. And then once you do that, it gives you a little bit of roll-up information as to how much it was. So for example, this might have been a $10,000 deal, but maybe the grant you got was only $4,000, and the actual close date. So this is the date that it closed or the date that you're expecting it to close. Now when I track grants, I don't like to close them until we actually get the check or the client gets the check. So if that's the case, you might want to create an intermediary step. And I'll do that right now. And then, of course, you could also include the reason why this was done. And you could skip that if you don't want to track that information. But if we go back to our settings and we go back to deals, I like to create an intermediary step where you have approval, but you have not yet gotten that information. Now, it doesn't happen all of the time where you get something approved and then it's turned down later for some reason, or you might not get it. But I like to track things that actually come in rather than just promises of things that are going to come in. So I will put something here like grant approval. And that gives me an additional stage to show what's been approved but not yet collected or closed. So if you were to look at the deal then, you would see it added one additional step. So if we were to take a deal and track it, we could say that it has been approved, but not yet closed because we haven't necessarily received that grant funding. So those are ways that you can handle your transactions. Additionally, you can set amount ranges, and this is a way for you to track your deals in terms of categories. So for example, you might have small grants, you might have very large grants, you might have a division within your organization that tracks huge grants or huge gifts, major gifts they're sometimes called. So you could do a roll-up in your reports section of the site or your deals section of the site where you're looking at your particular deals that you have out there at any given time, and you could say, separate out for me my major deals or my major grant tracking items as opposed to just the smaller grant tracking items. Maybe you want to make a concerted effort just to spend that day following up with your major contributors. You could do so by separating out these amount ranges, which kind of act like tags or categories, if you will. The next section we're going to discuss is data fields. So this was something that we showed briefly in one of our intro videos, but you can create custom fields that will be displayed on your contact fields when you're entering information for that specific contact. So you'll notice here right now our data fields include just the contact information. Now you can create a separate tab to track different information specific to your organization. For example, if you wanted to track, or if you were an organization that needed to track the assets or revenue of an organization, maybe you're a foundation that tracks information about the organizations that you give grants to, you could create a new tab here, and then you'd be able to change the title of your tab over here in the label, and let's just call this, let's call it something like Grantee Financials. Oh, we have a maximum of 16 characters, so let's just do, let's say NP Financials, and that will give us the ability to track the financials of nonprofits that we work with. And then you have the choice to show this in different areas. You can show this on all contacts, on people only, or on companies only. In this case, we're going to choose companies only because this is financials of a company. It doesn't really relate to individual people. So we'll click companies only, and we'll click apply changes. That changes the tab right there. And then you can actually create fields by clicking this button. So we'll click this button and it gives us the field, and you'll see here we have a field label. So maybe we can type yearly revenue, for example, or let's call it annual revenue. And this would be the last reported revenue. And you have different types that you could do here: single line text, multi-line, select box, separator, or an address. So in this case, we'll leave it as single line text because we're just going to enter a number string in there, a dollar amount. And then your field width, you have 1 column or 2 columns, and this just determines how wide it is. We'll leave that at 1 column. We'll click apply changes. And we're already using annual revenue, so it gives us an error saying that's a pre-existing field. So let's just change this and call it revenue. We'll apply those changes, and you'll see that's added there. We could also add a new field, and let's call this amount donated. And you can track, say, or you know what, we'll just call this annual budget. How about that? And we'll track the budget amounts for this particular organization. Same thing, apply. Now this is called an MP Financials tab, and you'll notice we'll create one more tab and we'll relate this one to contacts specifically. So if there were other types of information that you collect on relation to a contact, you might enter that here. So Nimble does a pretty good job of tracking general contact information, but you might want to add a little bit of different information. Let's say, for example, you were a hospital or a small medical clinic and you wanted to track some general medical information on somebody. You might want to track, let's just say you were a health-related organization and you were tracking the different types of ailments that somebody might have. You might put ailment in here, show this related to people only because an ailment is obviously not related to a company. And you would apply that change. We're going to call this ailments, sorry. And then the field, we would track a specific ailment. Does somebody have some specific health ailment that you might be tracking inside the database related to that person? And you can do a single line text where you would add it, or in this case, we could do a select box, and then it's going to ask you to add different values. So we're just going to make up a couple things here. Ailment number 1. Maybe there are specific ailments that your organization deals with that are related to each other, and you could put those things here. And we'll make this one column as well and apply changes. So we picked ailments, which show up in people only, and we also clicked nonprofit financials, which shows up in companies only. And then we'll just create a sample tab, which we're just literally going to call sample tab. And we're going to show up in all contacts, not just people's or companies, but all contacts. We're going to apply those changes, and we're going to add just a simple test field, which we will call test field. And we will make this a multi-line text, which gives people the ability to add something like an address, or actually there's a separate one for address, but multi-line will be like paragraph entries. We're going to apply changes there. And then we're going to come over to a contact field, and we'll see where that information comes into play. So for example, we will just click here, the CEO of Nimble, we'll click on his tab, and by clicking these 3 little buttons here, you will pop down all of the additional contact information, and you'll see where the tabs are listed right here. The first tab is always contact info. The second tab is always system information, and that tracks when the contact was created, when it was modified, and additional information as to when they were last contacted. Then you have your custom tabs. For example, on our contact level, we were tracking ailments. And you'll see here we don't have any data yet because we haven't tracked anything with him. So we can click here to edit his contact tab, and that will give us the field that we entered, which was to add an ailment. So it's now giving us that select box. So we can select ailment 1, ailment 2, ailment 3. We'll click update. And then when we look on his ailments tab on his contact, it shows us the ailment that he has. You'll also see that it has the sample tab added here, and we could add information. Test field gives us the ability to have a multiple line box, which we would click update, and that would show us there. That's a great way to add additional description text or something that you might want to track up here on the top tab for this particular contact. Now you'll notice on the company, if we click company, this is his company file, and you'll see there is where the NP Financials tab is. So we click there, we can click edit, and we might want to add revenue for his company. And I don't know what that is, but let's just say it's $1 million. We can put that there and update that. And then you'll see it's still loading. And then when that's done loading, you'll see the revenue gets added there. Now, if you wanted to add additional fields, you would do it just the way you change any other field when you're editing a contact by clicking the edit button. So you'll see here you have your different tabs. Here's your normal contact info for this particular company, and then you have your additional tabs here. Here's your NP Financials, and then we can also include an annual budget for this particular organization, and let's just call that 10 million, and you can update that record, and you have both pieces of information here, your revenue and your annual budget. Now, to change the way information may be displayed or the way in which your custom contacts or your custom information is being displayed, you can go to your settings, come down to your data fields, and for example, in the ailments section, you could move the boxes around. So if you have several fields listed here, for example, we have a few custom contact info fields, you could change the order in which they are displayed just by dragging them into different areas. And that will change the way they are displayed. You can also click on them to get the information as well. And then to delete one, simply click or hover over the box. You can't delete contact info, that's a required field, but you can delete by just clicking this X on the custom tab, and it will warn you that all of the data in the custom fields will be permanently lost. You click proceed, and then it gets you back to your normal. And the final setting we're just going to speak about briefly here is the integrations tab, which you can click on, and you'll see some third-party integrations that you could bring in. For example, you have things like MailChimp or Wufoo forms you might have on your site, HubSpot, Reportive through Gmail, or maybe an external web page that you have hooked in. There are also dozens of other integrations through the Nimble marketplace, most of which go through Zapier and some of the other types of things that integrate third-party cloud applications. But you would click here on settings to enable or disable them, and then actually take a look at their settings. So for example, if you had a MailChimp account, you could directly import your contacts between MailChimp and Nimble and make sure that they're up to date. A cool thing about MailChimp is inside your contact information, you could actually see which MailChimp lists they're part of and when you might have last emailed that person as a part of your MailChimp email newsletter blasts. So there's some pretty cool integrations you can do. Real quick, you can click on Nimble Marketplace, and that will show you all the different integrations that you might be able to do with your organization. And then again, you'll see here a lot of these are with Zapier or other integrations that help you integrate these different APIs of these cloud systems. So it's a way to come here and check. They've got Aweber, Constant Contact, obviously Google Contacts, FreshBooks if you're sending invoicing. If you do a lot on Evernote, go to Webinar, you can have your information there. QuickBooks, a lot of different ways to integrate your information here. You'll also notice they have a Salesforce integration, so you can integrate your Salesforce information as well. So you can do these third-party applications. You could send them a note if you want them to add other ones, and then you can test out the settings of how those work. I hope that gave you a good example of how we would set up the settings for a nonprofit organization in Nimble. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment on this video or in the post to which this video is attached, and we'll try to address them for you as quickly as you can. If you want to learn more about Nimble, make sure to do a search on our blog or check the link in this post on our introduction video to Nimble to show you all of the things that Nimble can do for your nonprofit organization.